There you go, Jennifer.
Thank you, Ms. Rita. Well, good afternoon again, everyone. We are now in open meeting of the West End Opportunity Partnership Board Development Committee. It's Friday, March 22nd, and this meeting is being called to order at 4:31 p.m. I want to welcome everyone to this meeting, especially appreciating you on a Friday afternoon. I want to begin with the approval of our last meeting minutes, which was November 22nd of 2023. We had an opportunity to see those meeting minutes in advance. And when someone's ready, I'll be happy to entertain a motion to approve those meeting minutes.
Motion that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you, Chris. And is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Alicia. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thank you so much. I want to start today by acknowledging some recent events that are related to our board development process. We have seen that the board development policy that was adopted by this committee to have two nominees come from each of the entities as their seats came for renewal, that was approved by our full board in the fall of last year. And since that time, our executive, Laura Douglas, worked with our General Assembly after discussing that opportunity with Dr. Milliner as our chair and me as the chair of the Board Development Committee. And I believe we're all aware of Senate Bill 259 that passed out of the Senate, I believe last week or the week before, and was heard in the House committee this week. It also passed the House committee this week and is headed to the floor of the House for approval that we anticipate will be next week. One of the things that we have seen is that we have had members of our board provide some constructive feedback about the process of how this occurred. So I just wanted to take a moment on behalf of the partnership and as your board colleague and someone who was aware of the decision to move forward by asking the General Assembly to codify the language that this board previously approved and to give us an opportunity to create the accountability that we need if some organization is unwilling to follow that process. I know some of the questions have been around is it appropriate for our executive to make that decision without board approval? And I want to just acknowledge that there could be difference of opinion on this perspective. However, I am very confident that we have utilized Amy Cubbage as our general counsel to guide us every step of the way. And we see that Laura is empowered to act on behalf of the partnership as our executive. And one of the things that I want to say before I open it up for your feedback in a conversation today is that I think it would benefit all of us to revisit some of the training that we've had together as a board. This is, as I mentioned to Ms. Hodgkin, still a fairly new board where we're adding new members and we're growing our own capacity and capabilities to do this work together. I think it would help us to revisit the roles and responsibilities of our executive versus the roles and responsibilities of the governing body, because I think it's in the spirit of trying to continue to efficiently move this work forward is why our executive was empowered to do what any executive would do after having that conversation with our board chair and the chair of the board development committee. Now, with that said, I think we all regret that the media reported this to our full board and got ahead of our ability to discuss this. It was my plan to have this conversation that I'm now beginning at this meeting. You may recall that we had some difficulty getting Kevin's calendar aligned with ours. And so we had a meeting scheduled. I was planning to discuss this with you at the time. It got canceled and then rescheduled. In the meantime, the media reported on something. I want to make sure you're appreciating sincerely I would never want our board to hear about something in the media. Instead, from those of us who were aware of this process, and Laura certainly communicated that in her email to our full board, that the media beat her to the punch as well in terms of our communication strategy. So let me stop there and open it up for discussion today and see if you have any questions. I am certain this will be a topic that we'll cover again on Monday evening. So if you want to save your remarks for Monday, that's fine, but it's important to me to honor your work on this committee and to have this opportunity to have a transparent conversation about what has occurred.
I'll go. So it caught me off guard as well. When I voted for this in the committee meeting, it was my understanding that we were going to be asking for two, for each institution to give us two candidates. And then it seemed like it kind of changed. And under no time did I think that we were talking about kicking off people off the, or organizations off the board. I think that what we have now is a issue where we have now disappointed the Urban League and the NAACP. And I don't think that's a good look for us. So I really feel like we didn't necessarily do this in the right way. I know, just in talking to some of the board members, that we never thought that it would get to the point where we would be kicking off, the Urban League and upsetting, end up kicking off the NAACP and upsetting the Urban League to this effect. And so that was not our intentions when we made that vote. It was really more or less just making sure we had enough candidates to look at.
I hear you. And thanks, Chris, for speaking up first and sharing that perspective. I have a couple of thoughts and then want to, again, facilitate a conversation of other ideas. I am very clear that the intention is not to kick anybody off this board. It is truly to honor the processes that this board has established. It is up to each of us as an entity to choose as to whether or not we're going to comply. So I guess there could be another way of looking at this that would put the onus of responsibility onto each of the institutions to comply with the board policy when our terms are up for renewal. And I'm talking about me as well. My term will be up for renewal at some point in the future, and Volunteers of America will be asked to provide two nominees, and I will respect the process of the committee and the board to make that selection. And if I choose not to comply, then I would expect the board to have a process in place to address that. Our board policy didn't have the accountability piece in it. So what happens when we have an entity choose not to comply? It really puts us in a state of limbo. So I guess I want to reframe the conversation that no one's kicking anyone off. We have extended an invitation for everyone to support this board's policy, and it's up to those entities to determine if they can. With that said, though, I appreciate the spirit that we don't want division within our organization with the NAACP, with the Louisville Urban League, two institutions that we absolutely want at our table. So I completely agree with you in terms of wanting to see this conflict resolved so that we can all get realigned and focus on the work ahead. Any other comments on this topic or reactions to anything you've heard, Alicia?
I hear you now stating that there was a discussion with Dr. Milliner, Ms. Laura. I hear that now, but and I understand the scheduling. I understand that as of today, right? But prior to that, it was a little disheartening to see it in the media, to have people approach me and ask me questions about something I had no idea about, and I sit on this very committee. So I understand that things happen, things transpired. I appreciate you addressing it today. But hopefully in the future, we can communicate a little bit better so that, I mean, in business, you want to stay ahead of the game. You want to stay ahead of the media, ahead of the situation. I do have multiple questions about the House bill.
Yeah.
I don't want to bring that up in this conversation, but I do feel like it's a little disheartening to hear that in the media.
I want to personally take accountability for that, Alicia, and apologize that that was not proactively communicated to you. If I could redo how the communication went, I would have taken personal responsibility to communicate to this committee. I did not anticipate that this would move as quickly as it did. And once it got out ahead, it was hard to catch up with it. Laura's email attempted to do that, but your point is absolutely correct. I hate the fact that several of you were caught flat-footed and unaware of this, and I never want you to be in that position again. So I just want you to know that that feedback is heard and well received. Yeah.
Yes. So I've been pondering sort of how we got here, and even went back to the recording of the August 15th meeting when the new policy was introduced. And specifically, there was a point in time during that meeting where the question came up, if only one nominee were to be submitted, that one nominee would be considered. And that was sort of an expectation that you laid out when the policy was introduced. And so I'm just, a bit of an awkward position, because to the extent, even though I represent the NAACP, to the extent that there's any communication or correspondence going to the Louisville branch, I have not been privy to that. And so, whether it be the committee, the chair, no communication has come forward to me. And so I was sort of anticipating that the NAACP might have that position, which is why I voted no against the new policy. But also, we had a conversation about whether or not I was willing to serve, whether or not I would get an opportunity to apply. And so I've just been operating, I guess, on standby ever since. So I would certainly encourage, more and better communication, particularly with this committee, for all the reasons that have been noted, especially as each of the representatives serves as a bit of an ambassador. But I am disappointed that it's come to this, and that, no communication back to this committee even came up about the need to go to the Senate. So I'm just saying, as a committee, it would be nice, I think, or at least appropriate for committee members to have an opportunity to comment and have input on strategy going forward.
Thank you for that feedback, Gina. I hear two parts to that, so let me see if I can respond to each. First, I will take responsibility to go back and listen to the recording to rehear the comment that you're referencing. So I don't want to speak to that until I have a chance to do that. But my commitment to you is that I'll definitely prioritize that and be prepared to speak to that soon. The second part, though, is related to the communication that has happened between this board and the NAACP. And I can recall that I shared in, I believe, the committee, and if not the committee, in the full board. So I may need some help reminding me if it was in this setting or the full board setting. But I know on at least 2 occasions, I did provide the update that I have been in conversation with Mr. Cunningham. And I revealed that in those correspondence that I had with Mr. Cunningham, I was sharing with him the board policy and letting him know that we were going to put your board seat in abeyance until such time either the NAACP complied with the policy or we figured out another way forward. So I feel like that correspondence happened up until the point when this bill was filed. That's when the communication did not come forward proactively before the media released it. But there was a period of time when I was keeping members of this board updated as to the communication and the decision that Mr. Cunningham was communicating back to me on behalf of the NAACP. Okay, thank you. Anything else on this topic? Again, knowing and trusting that we're going to revisit this on Monday. Rita and Laura, I saw you come off of mute.
No, I was just going to say, I think the discussion up until this point has been very valuable. I think you've covered the points that need to be covered. I just want to emphasize one thing, that the import of the legislation is not to kick people off of the board, that the legislation specifies what will occur if 2 or more names are not submitted, but each of the nominating entities has the ability to make a decision to submit 2 or more names. So they can exercise free will. And if they submit 2 or more names, then we'll just tool along in the same way that we are doing now with the replacement for the Federal Reserve seat. So there's no, the result of the legislation getting passed does not compel the expulsion of any group.
Thank you, Laura. So I have
Jennifer,
yes, Rita.
if I might just make a couple of comments for the committee to consider moving forward. I too was sort of, well, let's see, my background is blurred, but that's okay. I was very taken aback, just sitting back watching all of this, and here are the reasons. The first is the process itself. The way I looked at it, when we were trying to come up with a process to select the neighborhood reps. It's my understanding that's where the basis of this came from. And the reason I was confused is because Gina is the one who so graciously helped this committee to get to that process. So this is that's the basis, I think, that the committee came up with the process for this particular group of board members that we had to have a process for. So I was like just taken aback and confused about that. So that's just a thought to put out there. The second thing, we had this board training and all of this, and I was surprised to see board members interviewing with the media without having that conversation internally with the leadership of the organization, because that in itself could support how the media got out in front of what you were trying to do, Jennifer, with this committee. So I think we have to be conscious of our roles and responsibilities as board members in terms of how we conduct ourselves. And the last thing, well, I would say would be to, when there are issues or concerns or problems within, the thing to do is to come to the executive leadership and have a conversation and work to try to get things resolved internally first. Those were kind of, three observations that I was making, and I just kind of want to put that out there in the atmosphere, because I think sometimes we get caught up and we forget how we're supposed to be conducting ourselves all the way around. So I just share that for food for thought.
Thank you, Rita. One thing as I close this part of our conversation to maybe use as a segue towards the meeting on Monday and beyond, I truly see this conflict in the context of the development and the evolution and maturation of this body. And, you have the forming and then the storming stage of development. And it's in this time that we are bumping into each other. And from that, I hope comes the norming and then the performing stage of development, But I guess I want to normalize a little bit this conflict in the sense that we've had this disagreement among some of our board and our executive leadership team. And it's how we now show up in response to honoring the different perspectives, respecting each other through this process, and then getting really clear around roles and responsibilities. What is the role of a governing board member versus our staff, versus our general counsel, versus other stakeholders that we're interfacing with, including the media. And I do hope that there's a lot of learning. I'm not trying to be Pollyanna and say that I know this has caused harm to our board. And it's my intent to seek to repair that through brokering open and honest communication and showing up in a way that's respectful of all these varying perspectives to get to a better place. And I hope we all continue to come forward in good faith, to have conversations that are healthy and honest that seek to move us forward instead of stay in a place of conflict. We're going to have future conflict. We're going to have major decisions to make together. And so to that end, I think this gives us a little bit of a scrimmage to figure out how do we show up when we have a member of the media watching this meeting right now. We will all be asked for comments about this particular issue and future issues. And so having opportunities to learn together and grow together is something that I just want to frame this issue from that perspective before we move on. So there's one more point I want to make in terms of updates related to the whole process of renewing terms. We do have other board members whose terms will be coming up for renewal soon. And Rita and I have been corresponding. She's going to put together a calendar to help us get way ahead of that curve. I know, again, because we're still in our infancy, some of this has snuck up on us. And I'd love an opportunity to have this board have 2 to 3 months to seek additional nominees from each of the seats that we're going to be evaluating for renewal, so that this does not feel rushed, so we have plenty of time to plan and enter into that process. So I just wanted to make you aware that we have other seats that will be coming up for renewal soon, and Rita's going to prepare that calendar so that we can build this meeting schedule around it. Okay, moving on now to the next part of our agenda. We have open board seats. Before we discuss a motion or I take a motion for the financial seat, I want to let you know that on Monday, we will have a new member of our board from Simmons College. Now, just as a reminder, Simmons is in a different classification. Simmons, the University of Louisville, the governor's appointee and the mayor's appointee, they are not subjected to this board policy the way the rest of us are. So Simmons has identified Dr. Walter Malone, who will succeed the late J. Michael Brown as their representative. And Dr. Malone and I have had an opportunity to meet. He's met with Laura and Rita. He is delightful. He is eager. He is enthusiastic. And he can't wait to do this work with us. So I know everyone will enjoy having an opportunity to be with him and fellowship on Monday at our meeting and welcome him to our board. But I wanted you to hear about that as soon as we possibly could share it. Oh, yes, thank you, Rita, for clarifying, because his dad is also Dr. Walter Malone at Canaan Christian. So thank you so much. So next up, we have our financial seats, and I want to open it up for discussion. Not everyone could be at the interview with Kevin, but we did have quorum for Kevin's interview. So I want to just get your perspective, given that we have 2 candidates from Community Ventures. We have Kevin and Cherie. Opening it up for discussion now before I take a motion to make a recommendation, take that forward to our board on Monday.
Jennifer, I have a question.
Sure.
Before we move forward with that. I know, did we ever reach out to El Holmes and Lisk about a seat? I know that came up in a meeting before, and I was just curious if they refused or if they wasn't available or whatever.
Great question. Laura, do you have that update? I know I didn't have any contact with them, but we were dividing our prospect list.
Mm-hmm. El Home would not be able to serve because they are currently under contract
Mhm.
with us, and that would be a conflict of interest.
And Liz is in conversations about the
yes.
potential as well.
Yeah,
Okay,
so.
thank you for that
Mhm.
reminder. They were conflicted out. Okay, thank you,
Yes.
Mark.
Mhm.
And thanks for your question, Alicia. Chris?
Yeah, I thought I saw one of the resumes. I don't know if it was today's interviewee or the one on Monday, but they said that they were in charge of our some kind of our bookkeeping. Is that correct?
Yeah, Laura, do you want to
Uh,
explain the role of the fiscal agent?
Yes, the fiscal agent has been the same organization that Kevin and Cherie are from. However, they have insisted on providing the service at no fee. We have not paid them anything. They have not requested any payment. So they are voluntarily supporting us with the financial statements now. So there's no existing conflict in terms of them being a contractor.
And I noticed
Or
they're
being a
both
board.
not out of
Mhm.
Louisville, so I don't know how that's going to impact them with the distance and just even not being in the city of Louisville. So do we not have any other potential Louisville folks that we could interview?
Have a presence here.
Mhm.
We don't have anyone at this time, Chris. I did talk, both candidates have committed to participating in person as much as possible. Of course, even me being an example, I'm in Louisville, but by residence, but not always by profession. And so sometimes I zoom in because of that, but I think their commitment is to be physically present as much as
Mhm.
possible for our meetings. And I think Cherie's question around that, Kevin indicated the same, that when they make a commitment, they really want to be sure that they are dialed in and doing this work with us. So my hope is that their expertise would trump the fact that they may not physically live in the city with us if they can participate in person.
And they do have a professional presence in Louisville.
That's a good point. Thank you. All good discussion points. Other thoughts or comments?
I have a comment. I know y'all about sick of hearing me.
No, never.
I think both candidates, they interviewed very well. But if I had to choose based off of me, it would be Miss Cherie, only because she has a home and family. She's more familiar with the West End. I think she'll be a better candidate to be able to not only use her expertise, but understand the community in which we're trying to assist in this economic development project.
Thanks for that comment and that feedback.
Jennifer, I'll probably be abstaining just because I didn't have
Okay, there you go.
because I didn't have an opportunity to sit in on Mr. Smith's interview.
Mhm.
But just for clarification and thinking about process going forward, the decision to approach community ventures, is that a matter of, I guess, a resolution of this committee, or is that decided somehow or somewhere else? Right, like anybody could be, considered, but I guess I'm wondering at what point or what the drivers were for
I see.
deciding that community ventures would be the institution that sent two nominees.
That's a great question, Gina. Just as a reminder for you and the rest of our committee members, we have been seeking a foundation representative, a financial representative, and each meeting I cast a request out to our committee and full board. If you have prospects, please send them our way. We haven't had other prospects that have come forward beyond the two that we brought to this committee. With that said, we always want to consider other prospects. So that invitation remains open. What I think we're called to do today is to consider these two candidates. If there is a sentiment that we need to continue to keep this seat open and to continue to look for alternatives. We can have that conversation. However, I feel confident that there has been a consistent request for prospects to be brought forward. And these are the two that we have on the table at this time. Laura?
Madam Chair, let me offer up just a few words regarding Kevin. Kevin is his financial expertise and his reputation in financial circles throughout the state is impeccable. He is someone who has a history of working with nonprofit organizations, and he is very seasoned. I think he has a demonstrated commitment to the type of work that we do. This is not to say anything negative about Cherie, but just to say, I think both candidates are outstanding, but if I put them together, it's Kevin has much more experience as serving on nonprofit boards and with nonprofit governance.
Thank you for that feedback, Laura.
Jennifer, I know that several of the committee people were not able to be on the call Monday. And so everybody's here today and they were able to interview Ms. Hawkins. I might offer up that we might need to circle back to be able to give everybody an even playing ground to talk to Kevin, because, you know, in that interview, I think when he articulated the history of how he started doing these, started out doing business loans for women. He started out like 30 years ago doing $500 and $1,000 business loans. And in his organization today, I think he said, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, they're up to a $200 million budget that he operates now in like 7 states or what have you. So over that 30-year period, I think it would be beneficial for the entire committee to be able to talk and understand, to be able to compare apples to apples. So I just offer that suggestion.
That is a good suggestion, particularly in light of both Alicia and Laura recognizing the strengths of each candidate. And we're going to continue, I hope, to be faced with a really high-grade problem of being met with
Yes.
2 or more really strong candidates. So I think this committee pressing pause to give all of our committee members an opportunity to level set by meeting Kevin in the context of this board. I know Gina had mentioned, of course, that she's had the pleasure of knowing and working with him. Just as we're building this muscle together around board development, I personally really like that suggestion, Rita, and wonder, Chris and Gina, would you appreciate an opportunity to meet with Kevin before you're met with this decision?
I would, yes.
Okay.
Gina?
And he's traveling until April 1st. That was the reason that we tried to get him in before this meeting. So it would probably be after that when we could set up the meeting.
I'm very supportive of that. And Gina, I saw you come off mute. Were you going to affirm what Chris said as well, that you'd like to spend some time?
Sure, yes.
Okay. So why don't we take this approach, you all? It's not going to happen for our March meeting, which is fine. Let's take the month of April to reconvene this group. We'll bless and release Dr. Milliner and Alicia since they've met him, unless they want a second bite of the apple. And of course, they're open and willing or more than welcome to attend. Let's give this committee another opportunity to convene with Kevin. And then let's set our eyes on the May meeting to make a recommendation to our board for the election of this particular financial seat. Does that sound okay to everyone in terms of next steps?
Yes.
Jennifer, I did have a request, I guess, to confirm or affirm the members of this committee, like who is currently, like, just to refresh on how many members there are, voting members on this committee, and who those board members are. I mean,
I
it's-
This is a full committee today. I don't believe we're missing any members. Rita and Laura, you'll have to fact check me though. Is that correct?
There was some discussion about Dr. Craddock,
That's
with
right.
regard to J. Michael Brown's seat.
That's right. Dr.
Yeah.
Craddock had expressed interest in joining board development, since we did lose, J. Michael. Otherwise, Dr. Milliner, of course, has, the ability as our chair to participate in this committee,
Mhm.
and you, Chris, Alicia, and me. And so that is a good, point, Rita. If you'll help me close that loop when we see Dr. Craddock on Monday, I'm going to make myself a note to do that as well. I know we've had some correspondence about this topic, and I know he's expressed an interest. Okay. We're still looking for our foundation or philanthropic seat. And so as a friendly reminder, we are seeking prospects for that particular seat. So if you have a person or an entity that would be a good prospect for us to reach out to, please let me know either now or after today's meeting. And with that, I'm going to see if we have any other business to come before board development today. If not, I'll seek a motion to adjourn. Unless you want to keep hanging out with me on a Friday.
I motion that we adjourn the meeting.
All right. All right. You all, again, thank you so much for engaging in this important dialogue today that we've had together and for participating in this committee. I'm confident we're going to be stronger on the other side of this, and I look forward to seeing you. I'll be in person on Monday, so I look forward to getting to spend some time with you. And until then, have a wonderful weekend.
You too.
Bye,
Bye.
you guys. Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Excuse me.
Bye.
Goodness.